Hello, hello, hello. Hi, I just streamed the wrong stream for a second, and now we're on the right stream. Sorry about that. Anyway, today we're going to be getting into the thick of the actual main, or an actual main project. First, we're going to clean up a few loose ends from before, and make one hopefully quick component. If you remember last time, we made the daytime controller, which is not this map. Let's load that map up. Time of day. Alright, here we are, daytime controller. Thing that I noticed last time is that, oh, this is set to slow again. Start to test. The thing I noticed the last time is that when it's night, the sky is blue. That's not how night skies work. You may have noticed. It looks pretty good, honestly. I think that is the one detail that feels pretty far off for me. I also talked to our VFX guy a bit and got a little bit of information, but nothing that was too much to change how we did this. He talked about fixing the moon so that you didn't have to manually set its phase, but we already handled that. I just want the sky to be black here. So with that in mind, this is going to get the sky dome now, because that's where that comes from. I believe the sky dome. Alright. So there's just one sky dome. The sky dome in different skies is actually the same thing. So we're going to drag it down here. De-instance reparent. Perfect. And now this just replaces your sky. This is a cycling sky, and maybe we make this into well, I guess what I could do instead of making this community content is I could pass this to Neil and say, hey, can you make this look exactly as good as you can, which would probably be a lot of improvement from him. And then we can make it official. Make it just one of the sky options is the one that does this instead of just looking good at one static state. But we'll worry about that later. Community content's pretty good. Sky dome. So what I want to do is take the night sky, the sky, dusk sky, or was it dawn? Nope, wasn't either of those. Sunset. Let's find the skies. Early morning. And I don't remember which day sky we were using. I think we were using the default one. And we're going to compare the sky dome in each of these. Ooh, that's some options. Okay. Well, we're going to do the same thing we did before with these guys. So we took care of every piece except for the sky dome already, to a pretty good degree. De-instance. Alright. How many people are watching? Always Buck Monster. Let us delete everything else. Alright, I don't know if we need to change the clouds too much. Can I hide these things? I totally can. That's great. This makes this much more So the clouds will look strange if they just phase into being. And I actually talked to our VFX guy about all sorts of very fancy things we could do with skies. We were talking about weather in general and how to make the snow and stuff and that sort of thing. We haven't, that'll be a future task. It looks like the snow is actually very promising. We'll make some really cool weather effects. But for now, if the clouds just phase in and out of being, that's going to look really weird, right? So here's your default sky, some wispy clouds. Here's the default morning sky, some very big, obvious red clouds. That makes it look really morningful, but if they just appear, that's going to look really weird. At nighttime, some clouds. I don't think the clouds need to be there at night. I like the star field a lot more. But in our, if we actually just, let's see. I'm gonna make these invisible, and I'm gonna hit play and see what it does. It's okay. Well, that's kind of confusing, but whatever. So if you pause in the morning, it still looks morningful, even though there aren't really obvious red clouds above us. That's okay. The sun and the sun and the moon look really ridiculous because they are hidden behind these clouds. Some of the VFX things don't know how to handle being invisible. It's not a thing they need to do. But for now, the question basically is, we can change the colors. We're going to do that. That's easy. The question is, should we change the clouds as well to default to like the morning clouds, for example. Should we have, let's see, a sky dome. No, not that one. Really? Oh, I see. This is not visible. This guy. Right, so if we have these clouds all the time, how will these clouds look during the day? I don't know. Luckily, this isn't that hard to try out because all we have to do is change the cloud shape. Large, thick. Really? Oh, high clouds, clouds. This is the same in every case. Brightness, large, opacity. Huh. Is it unchecked? These are the ones? No, they're there in every one. That's interesting. There are advanced settings. Of course there are. Here we go. There's all sorts of details. Really, I want to do them. I don't want to change 20 different properties to try to make it match exactly. What I want to do is just change some colors and try to get it kind of close-ish. So, take our script, client controller, and drag the sky dome in here. We were doing alphabetical before, so that comes up here, I guess. Sure, it's 2 words. And sky, nope, not you. Here. Sky dome. This text is huge. Okay. And then let's look at what is the most impactful change here. So if we take this sky dome that's visible right now, well, we were trying to go for night, right? So if we go to night sky, this guy is not visible. Let's turn this back on again. Oh, interesting. The night sky is blue. Why is it blue? Sky, nighttime. Sky dome. Oh, that's not nighttime. That, got it. Nighttime's the top one. Inherit, inherit, inherit. Okay. So look at this guy. And compare it to this guy. It is, so these colors are actually low alpha. Maybe that's the thing that matters. Yes. Perfect. Horizon color. So there's a little bit of blue on the horizon at night. Okay. And haze color, that's pretty minor. In fact, I'm not even going to touch that. I'm just going to do, I think I'm just going to do zenith color and not touch anything else. Because it looks like overall tint doesn't change much. The clouds are changing a bunch, but we're gonna see how this feels with just the haze color. Or was it zenith color? It was zenith color. All right. So let's add one field in here. Sky dome. Day, sky dome, zenith color. And for the day, we have this guy. 0.024, 0.063, 0.212, 0.886. I'm receiving messages. Let's see if there's anything too important. Nothing important. Fantastic. All right, back to good stream. All right, so we got the color from that guy. We're gonna do the same thing at dusk. So this is the early morning one. Here's our zenith color. So this is 120, 217, 495, and 0.6. Ooh. Okay. Copy that one down to here and here. Remember, dawn and dusk we have exactly the same, which is not realistic, but it's good enough. And then we'll look at the night sky. All right. 0.031, 0.029, no 3. Gotta do your rounding. 0.047. All right, and 0.183. Okay. So all we're gonna do is set that exact property. Same as everything else. So we've got our rainbow skylight. We have sky dome instead. So our property is called zenith color. And let's make this a little bit wider. We're gonna do this in 2 chunks. We're gonna take this guy and put it in each of these 4 cases. Then we're gonna copy our values down. So day was the first half of the first one and the end of the last one. Dusk is here and here. Night is here and here. And dawn is the last 2. That guy and that guy. All right. Make this visible again, make this invisible. I'm actually gonna delete all 3 of these. I'll be able to undo it in a second if I need to. Bad argument 1. But a number got color. 106. One second. Food has arrived. So something went funny here. This turned into a core math lerp, not a color lerp. Was it? Did I mess it up in every line? I did. Okay. Luckily, the only difference is to change one variable. I guess that's where I started. That's why it erred on that line. Okay. And we will try this out. Where's the sun? All right, so we're in the middle of the day. Goes to night and the sky turns black. That worked really well for not having anything else going on. Still see a little blue around the horizon, but turns blue again at day. Oh, this looks so good. All right. And the last thing I want to consider is changing the clouds. We're gonna undo, get these guys back, and find the morning clouds. So we're gonna take these guys out and look at how the clouds are set up. So the cloud color is strong. I guess maybe the zenith color doesn't affect the cloud color, and maybe if the clouds were white, this would look really bad. Let's find out. So these are your morning clouds. If I set this to white, these are advanced colors, rim color, ambient. Yeah, okay. So this is not going to give the morning illusion at all, right? It's going to look really terrible. So we're just going to forget it. It looks pretty good with the wispy clouds. And we're going to update it. And that's it. Just make the sky black. Looks a lot better. Yeah, you know what? I forgot to post in Discord. Let me do something about that. Core streams. Look at all these little streaming. That's awesome. lift and larger project. Oh, Selector. All right. So we updated this guy. We probably should set it back to a few minutes. Other than that, I'm not worried about anything being out of order. And we're going to republish. Go to this guy and comes with them. Don't need this item anymore. Cool. I'm going to cut that screenshot out and get a new screenshot. Hopefully we can just start it at night. Nope. Night? Nope. Let's get a nice night screenshot. See, it's dark. Perfect. Interesting. You can update a template while the game is running and pause, but you cannot publish a template. Just 1 second while I eat a little bit of food here. Pretty good. All right, so next component, it's going to be pretty straightforward. Someone suggested an elevator, a lift. Seems like a pretty obvious thing to do and not very hard to do. It does suffer a little bit from being the kind of thing that could be very complex, right? You can imagine some seeds you know in video games, depending on which games you've played. Sometimes you get in the elevator, then you have to fend off zombies for a while. Sometimes you get in the elevator and it goes a little bit and then makes braking sounds and crashes down the shaft or throws you out the side or, you know, all sorts of lovely things. We're not going to do that. We're going to call it an elevator. It is going to go up and down. It's going to have buttons. This is, we could also just do an automatic thing that moves up and down constantly, like a moving platform, but I think that's actually a different component. I don't know that we need to conflate these together, especially since those so often move sideways and elevators never do. Like I said, you could have game mechanics based around, you know, pushing a button and having a train move, which is effectively an elevator. And if you wanted to make a move in a more advanced track, maybe I should hold off on this one until we have some new features. We'll make the very basic elevator, put in community content, and worry about the later one, and push that to actual core content once we have a better version. Right. So I'm imagining it's an elevator. Let's give it a 5. Is that big enough? Plenty big. Get a 0.1. Make it basically just a flat platform that has a button at the top and a button at the bottom. Pretty simple. And you, either button sends it either direction, right? I guess you'd want a button it and a button to call it. And you can only push the button at the appropriate time. So that makes 3 buttons. Not too hard. The challenge, that's everything. The challenge here is to, how do you control how high it goes? Because the other button has to be there, right? So we can actually make it networked and move it, or we can make it static and have the elevator figure out where the other platform is. Since this is community content, we can art it up a little bit. It doesn't have to be white box and doesn't have to be generic. Make it look like an elevator. I like that approach a lot, actually. So we're going to do material. Where is diamond plate? Yeah, okay. It's like an industrial elevator. I'm going to hide the widgets in the way. More cubes. Actually, let's take this one and duplicate it. I could rotate it. Sure, why not? Is it not on the ground? It is not on the ground. Seems too tall. Ooh, that's an effect. You see what I did? It rounded the scale, and since my scale is snapped to grid on 10, on 2.5 or 0.25, and this was 0.1, it set it to 0. That's not quite right. Alright, so these shouldn't all be diamond plates. That doesn't make any sense. I'll fix it in a minute. Take that guy, bring it over here. It's not the right angle for this. Alright, I realize these don't quite line up. I'm kind of someday on stream, I will actually spend a bunch of time doing map editing because I think it is interesting and there are some ideas that I would really like to build, some games I'd like to make. And when I do that, I'm going to be way more particular about exactly how everything lines up. It's kind of thing that matters to me sometimes, but when I'm doing this kind of thing, I just want to be quick with it. This elevator seems kind of horrible and dark. I wonder if we have something that's like bars that I can put as a material instead of having to put a bunch of meshes. I mean, no, there's some, right? There's grid lines. You want to do find Tron. Something like that we could do. That actually doesn't sound bad. What do the other frames look like? Nope. Nope. Alright, we'll use metal frame 1 probably. And I'm going to do some adjustments on this. Yeah, okay. So what I'm going to do is... Wow, is this spicy? I'm going to scale this down. Let's stop doing that, please. Move it up. And I want to change the UV scales. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. U is... Nope, that's the wrong way. We want this to be an integer, 6 maybe. Seems about right. I want to pick this so that it looks like a thing that you could look out of, and then underneath it there's one of these. So it's 5, or this is 3 units tall. Let's make it 1.5 for each half of this. Of course, do we want these little that doesn't quite line up. 5 will line it up, I think. Yep, okay. If I do that, then this guy's also going to be 1.5. But 1.5 and 5 are not round multiples, so I can't quite make this look perfect. And I don't want this to be not a round number. See how this looks when I do it to the back wall, too. It might look horrible. 5 divided by 2.5, nope, 3. This is about right. I think these tilings aren't right. One of them should be 3 times as much as the other one, not 2 times. So if we do 2, how does that look? Those are much closer to squares. That looks pretty good. And the question is if I do the third piece here, how bad do the, do I need like pillars in the corners? And maybe I do. It looks fine. The metal plate, what do they call this? Diamond plate, that should probably be only the 4, and the other things should be different. So we look for a metal brushed, maybe. Bottom line cubes, yeah, you're probably right about that. Too late now. Gold, nope. Hexagon, some future, ridiculous future thing. Nope, don't need it. here. That looks a little rough. Oh, those are diamond plates. Whoops. Oh, that is. Nope. All right, we're gonna use this steel brush like that. And we're basically gonna do the same thing on the front. Only just have a doorway in it. Not gonna bother to make the door open and close and make it like an industrial elevator, right? So we went from. Well, here's the cost of making. That's all right. We'll make this 1.5 maybe. Drag it over here. And then for this guy, we're gonna change that scale down to 2. Perfect. Not too far. Okay, we've got an elevator looking thing. Kind of. How big am I compared to this thing? That seems about right. Seems like a artist might have tested a lot earlier in the process. So we want a little stand. So we're going to find a bottom line cube. Perfect. Let's scale you down. Sounds about right. Scale you up. I think it's going to have a little button on top of it. We could do some with cabling or something if we wanted. With a brush steel, maybe. And cylinder, the appropriate size, of course, for a button. Probably should have done all 3 axes. Put a little triangle piece on top too. Triangle. Is that a shape I have available to me? What is it actually called? It's in there somewhere. Basic shapes. Basically I want half a cube, right? Wedge maybe? That's static mesh. Wedge, perfect. Scale this all the way down. Mount right on top. Perfect. Rotate. Take this guy. Move it up a little bit. Perfect. All right. So these guys are gonna get basic material, I think, or maybe plastic. Basically basic material. You make this guy grayish. And this one red. Red. Oop. Alright, you got a button. I'm going to do the thing where you put these in groups. Bottom, button. Elevator. I guess you could have a platform that goes with it to make it, like, as an example. That's probably what we should do. We should have another plane down here, a cube. Let's make a cube. Ish. So type this in. I want this to be underneath the elevator, the full amount. I'm going to take the default floor and drop it a little bit. Give this a material. Asphalt. Sure. You do something different like that. I'm sure someone more artistic would look into this and, nope, not that one. Concrete. Perfect. And would do a bunch of custom material stuff, make it look a lot better. I haven't put into that too much. All right, maybe we do want cabling if we're doing this. Let's do a couple more cylinders. That's about size of a cable. I would usually have like 4 of these in a row, right? So take the Z component, make that like 50. Oop, sure. On both sides. Bottom landing. Right, cables. Oops, there. System. All right. These guys should have a material on them. That is not this. Metal. Not the music. That brushed might work in this. If I can rotate it, can I rotate it? I can. I just have to make a custom material out of it, I believe. Rotate material. Standard material. This is confusing to me that you rotate a certain amount and it. These kind of look like cables. This is probably a better way to do this. Doesn't matter much. Colors make this a little darker, maybe. That looks pretty good. We're gonna duplicate this, put it on the other side. Where is the root for my system? Way off center, of course. Poop. We'll fix that later when we actually check it specifically, but I have moved the root over a little bit. Left cables. Cables, more unit out, maybe. Okay. That is, these are very tall cables. $30 maybe? Sure, okay. I'm gonna make the bottom button a child of bottom landing. Oh, can't do that. Okay. Yep, that's fine. Top button. Top landing. Organize these a little bit. Nope, not like that. These guys go way up to the top. Something like that-ish. So if we take the elevator and drag it up here, it doesn't run out of cable. That seems about right. Oh, this needs a hole in it, of course. Haha. Seems obvious in hindsight. Throw a little more food here. I'm gonna try to make some nice round numbers here. 250 in there? Okay, sure. The landing centered with the root of the thing. Same with this one. And the elevator itself, center. Cables. Okay, so now this should be exactly symmetrical. Perfect. This guy we need to break into pieces. going to take this piece and move it down a little bit just as a reference for my other pieces. So we need a hole big enough for all these things to go in, but still be lined up with the piece below us. Art with the non-artist. I want to be better at this stuff. This is definitely worth my experience, especially as I had one of the things that I really find very exciting about working here is that I have a few very like artistic ideas I want to do. I have things, you know, I've imagined or dreamed that I'm like, I need to build this. I need to have this really cool system, but I actually can. All right, let's grab the elevator and bring it up here. See how much hole we need on the thing below us. So if we duplicate this again, bring it up, shrink it this way, bring it back. A little bit bigger than that. Sure, that seems about right. Shrink it this way to who needs overlap. Perfect. And then bring one in the front. The elevator can be a little bit higher, that's fine. Too much. Not enough. Just right. And if you make the poor decision of jumping down the hole, then you don't take full damage because of the score. Yeah, that looks about right. So if I were to hit push button, calls elevator. Yeah. Alright, great. Let's send the elevator back down. And let's make these in a group. I can't rename all these at once. A travesty. They're gonna be in a folder. A group. In fact, I'm gonna do the same thing to put the button in there. I'll do the same thing to these. Bottom landing. And rename this cube. Okay. We're almost done. We need to write a script. The script is easy. And then we need to give it a button in the elevator. The buttons outside the elevator can only call the elevator. You cannot send it away without you in it. I guess that's not how an elevator actually works, right? But at the same time, you can't, I mean, because there's no door, you can just get inside, press the button, and get out again. That's not hard. So we need one more button. To go on both sides, one side, I don't know. But, not the wedge, the cylinder. Duplicate you, bring you over here, reset your rotation. Shrink you down a little bit, 0.03 maybe? Oop. That seems about right. How ridiculous do I look trying to use this thing? That's about right. Okay, so that shouldn't be in this, it should be part of the elevator. The elevator itself. Trying to figure out how we should set this up as a networking question. How many of these pieces should be in contexts or something like that. Most things you interact with, you collide with, that's fine. They're static, that's not very expensive. The elevator itself moves, but all the pieces inside do not. So the way this works basically is the elevator needs to be networked. It has to move. If I do that, all these cubes become networked. And well, they're never going to change because what's stored about them is their local position relative to the elevator itself. So some interesting transforms these have. That's fine, whatever. They're never going to change, so it's never going to actually cost network traffic, but it does cost computation while the game figures out whether or not it has changed and whether or not it needs to send updates, which it doesn't. This is a minor cost, might not matter, but it's still something. So what we can do is make this a static context instead. Create static context, this guy. We put it in here, get networked, reset its position, oops, put everything inside of it, then drag it out. Then it has not moved at all, it doesn't move the root. Now it's a static context. Everything inside of it is not networked and completely static. Great. That means it won't change, it won't cost anything. We have a single networked object in this. If you look at the basic door in the components, that's how it works. It's kind of a dirty, like, it's a very advanced way to save a little bit, but it's worth saving, especially when doors are everywhere and one of the biggest sources of networked objects in a lot of games. All right. Make a script for this. Elevator server. Easy enough. It needs 4 things. It needs 5 things. It needs a reference to the root. It needs a reference to the elevator, the thing it needs to move, and it needs a reference to all the triggers that I haven't made yet. Each of these 3 buttons should have a trigger, so you can use it. Easy enough. Gameplay object, create trigger. All right. So the bottom button, we're gonna put one in here. Going to reset its position. It's going to be around there. Let's hit V so we can actually see this thing. Just basically want to see, can I, if I'm, so the way the interaction works in Core is there's a check basically with the collision volume in front of you. So are you looking at the thing? So this is honestly almost big enough. In fact, it probably is. You basically never, unless you have some concern that someone could use something through a wall, which, whatever, in this case, you basically just want to make sure they can use it when they think they can and not be frustrated that they can't touch it. So these are all interactable. This says call lift. Elevator. We call it an elevator. We call it an elevator. Anyone can use it. There's no Teams bias in this thing. Cube is fine. Okay. So for the top button, actually, let's see. Yeah, we'll put this one in here. I'm just going to copy those properties. You wouldn't copy those properties. I would. Can I set them all? I cannot. This is a travesty. Okay, so we can actually see what's changed, but whatever. Just check all the things. Ooh, alright, so now this one should line up perfectly. Great. And then, so we've got the top and bottom. The third one is part of the elevator. If I reset its position, it comes into the middle of the elevator. We want it to line up with the button a little bit. So move it up, move it over. You might be able to use this one through the wall, because I don't know if it does a collision check for that sort of thing. But if you can, again, I'm not that worried about it. So the two at the top and bottom say call elevator. This one is also interactable, and it says go to other floor. I don't know what I would call this. Activate elevator? Sure. And our script, you reference those two and the 3 triggers. Trigger, trigger, trigger. First one, bottom trigger. Next one, top trigger. Next one, elevator trigger. Okay, so we can just hit play, and we can call elevator. You see about where we can call it. That sounds about right. Press the button does nothing at all. Yes, we can call it from inside. Whatever. This one, activate elevator. Call from outside. Okay, fine. And then we're going to take all of these properties, pop them there. Is there anything on this actual route that we'd want to customize? Definitely. All right. It should have that call the elevator, and the elevator have one that goes to the other floor. Later could change the button inside to select the floor. Let's that's true. So the ones outside call the elevator. The ones inside, it could be selected for. This could definitely be expanded to be an elevator that has multiple stops. That makes a lot of sense. For now, I'm making a basic thing, trying to just keep it simple because I think we will make this a lot better in the future with a lot more detail. We can do things where you control the path of it and maybe reuse the same thing for a train. But I don't want to spend too much time on that right now. But I think that for now this hopefully is useful, and if someone wants to make it hit multiple floors, that's not too hard to add. All right. So the things that a person might want to choose, how fast this thing goes. Some elevators are pretty slow, some are pretty fast. You probably want a... So we arted it up a little bit. We probably want some sounds. Some elevators, when you press the button, it kind of goes, sits for a second, and then goes clunk, and then starts moving, and has a single sound when it starts, and then moves for a while, then a single sound when it stops. I think we should do that. If we can find appropriate sounds, we should have 3 sounds. I don't think they'll be necessarily on here. I think they'll be part of the elevator itself. Which makes sense. We'll just have it move with the car. But I could have a activation delay. Makes some sense. You press the button, it waits a little bit. Then there's a question of, I haven't even thought about this, what happens if multiple people are pressing buttons at the same time? I think that what it will do is, as long as it has an action, as long as someone has pushed any button, then it will ignore all further button presses until it finishes its thing. So if someone at the bottom hits call and someone in the elevator presses the button, it won't stop. It will just keep going, and that's what you get. There's a question of how far it goes. I think we will drive this by literally finding the top landing and just looking at its, where is its Z coordinate? I basically want to have it look at the coordinates of the top and bottom landing folders, which means I should have those. This guy, bottom landing, top landing, bottom button, bottom landing. So this is where the elevator is. Bottom landing's a little bit lower. I need to move the roots of these up a little bit, which is a little bit of a pain. It's okay, we can do it. So I'm going to take all these pieces out of here, and then take this and move it up to 0. I think the elevator is also at 0. Yes. Put all the pieces back in. And now our root's at 0. We're going to do the same thing with the top landing. Take this and move it up to right on the top of this. Right there. Perfect. All right, let's find some sounds. Audio, mechanical maybe? Sometimes I was looking for sound, you have to know the magic words that the audio guys use, or, explore for a while and learn what they use. They're very good at describing a lot of different sounds. So we're trying to find something that we repeat and sounds okay. Ears, nope. That could be an elevator. Going up or down. This lasts for a while too. Alright. Oops, I didn't put that in here. We have like a clunk sound is the other part of this, right? I don't look for metal. Ooh. Some good sounds in here. Car crash, heavy metal. That's going to not be what I want. This could actually be a... That sounds like an end sound. That could also be. Okay, I think I could use this one as the start. They're pretty similar. And then the gears for the ongoing, and then the other crash for the end. A bunch of footsteps on metal. That's not right. Impact? Nope. Nope. Not nearly beat deep enough. Metal ambience loop. It's kind of cool. Some of these are maybe better than this. Oh, we already listened to these. Okay. Metal door hatch. Oh my god, this is a whole set. Not quite what we're looking for. Metal door, metal gear clothing, metal hammer. Metal junk pile. It's amazing how much depth there is to sound. You could imagine with the right kind of elevator sound, this could be added onto a starter end. Okay, I think we're gonna go for these for now. The question then is, do I want these to be in a client context? And if so, how do I control them? Is that worth it? Yeah, probably. Not too hard to handle. So I'm going to put these in a client context. Hopefully they kept their order. Yep. Put it in the elevator system. Movement sounds. No, we'll leave it called client context because we're going to put the script in here too. So the patterns we could have here. Elevator client. We could have the client script follow the same logic as the server script and just hope to be lined up, like just follow the exact same laws, rules, and it will know, it'll be in the same state. The risk there is that things don't quite always line up. There's a little bit of timing issues. If someone's smashing that button at the top of the elevator and someone's smashing that button at the bottom of the elevator or something like that, it's possible that on the client and the server, as the state changes, it catches in a different way and ends up with slightly different things, and then plays the wrong sounds. Because it's just sound, that's probably fine, probably doesn't matter. We could somehow transmit that information. We could actually fire events. I'd rather not do that. We could actually watch the position of the elevator that's already being networked and see if it's at the top or bottom. That's a reasonable approach. Look at these sounds in here. All right, so our start sound, none of these autoplay. This one needs to repeat. This one's going constantly when it moves up and down. I would like this entire folder to have no transform at all, right? To be dead centered on this elevator. On the floor, okay, whatever. For sounds like this that are embedded in some geometry, I often turn off occlusion, because that means it changes the sound based on if it's something in the way, and since it's already playing in the middle of a thing, it kind of feels weird that it would be affected that way. But spatialization and attenuation you definitely want. That's saying spatialization is that it plays in the correct direction. If you're, if I'm sitting here, it will play my right speaker or left speaker. Attenuation means if you're farther away, it's quiet. If you don't turn that on, every single person in the map will hear it all the time. That's not what you want. The elevator's pretty loud, but these seem pretty sizable. Maybe that's okay. We'll do some testing. We'll press the button right away and see how it sounds. All right, and the last thing to play with a little bit on sounds is look at pitch and volume. I guess really pitch. You can change the feel of a sound a lot by pitching it up or down and see what feels better. It's almost like you have 10 different sounds in there or something. Transit means it deletes itself. We're not doing that. We're using the pattern where the sound is here the whole time. This folder, this is interesting. I want these to move with the elevator. Can I do that? Yeah, I can do that. Okay, so we're gonna move the sounds into the elevator folder, but leave the script down here. So things in a static context exist on client and server independently. The client script can access them and play them. It's just as if they were in a client context. The server script versions will just not do anything. They'll just be ignored, and that's okay. They're not costing anything really. We do, since we have this, depending on how we're doing this, we might need the delay property. We might need to know some values here. In fact, let's think about this a little more. Well, we'll start with blending and think about it. All right, so this was our start sound. If we get up in here and hit apply effects, then we can try pitching up. Pitching down. In this case, I think pitching up is better. Down feels like we're having some huge industrial crash, not just the clank required for an elevator start. Okay. The repeated sound. I like it. Okay. I think 0 was pretty good on this one. I think it plays a couple of one of a couple random sounds, but all right, so leave those. Let us handle movement first. Elevator system, and we'll worry about sounds afterward. Elevator, bottom trigger, top trigger, elevator trigger. On interrupted. I think we want to make a different function for each trigger rather than hooking them all up with the same function and trying to check which one got pressed. They're just different behavior. Uninteracted bottom for your player. Uninteracted top. I wish I understood why Spline did that. Interacted elevator. So we need the properties on the system itself. We talked about this a little bit. What properties does someone want to change? Speed, activation, delay. I think you want these, the bottom landing and the top landing to be the magic things that it always goes to line up with the thing, rather than someone having to, if they want to make the elevator go taller, to have to like change some properties and make them exactly line up with things. So we're gonna need these two in our script. And these two. Speed, activation, delay. All right. And those are on here. And then we want to hook up all these trigger. Take out this 3 times and change the relevant parts. Top, elevator, top, elevator. All right. So there's a question of when it is moving, should we that's a funny problem. When it is moving, should we disable the buttons so that they don't even give you a use prompt, or should we just have the prompt not, you press the button and nothing happens? It's easier to make the button just do nothing. If we want to disable them, they have to be networked. And the one that's in the static context is even harder to disable because it's currently in the static context. We'd have to move it out of that static context, make it have a, maybe make elevator a group instead with the static context in it and the trigger next to that. Might be the way to go here. That is actually pretty tempting because it also solves our sounds, the inelegance of our sounds existing on the server. So we're making a group called elevator. And for our trigger, that is going to become elevator. And this, we call set context. All right, so this is still good. And then these 4 guys are going to come out of here. Children dart. These 3 are going to go into client context. All right. So now we have client, static, and a trigger. Perfect. They're still all in the same spots. We're just going to move the whole group. And it's a handful of things, but not everything. So we don't, it's pretty easy to write into one function the behavior of moving the elevator. You do a wait for the delay, you play the sound if you're on the client, and then you do a move to the right, up to the side, and then you're done. The question is, what do you prevent everything else from happening? There's kind of a weird edge case with triggers that if you just deactivate them in their interacted, if I just said trigger dot collision equals collision. How do I spell that? Collision, 2 L's. I literally just spelled it in the same line. If I do this, if several people are spamming, it might just trigger multiple times because it takes a little while for the client to get the message that I got disabled. And that's not good. So we want to actually check that it is not already being used and not do anything. So I'm going to have this is moving. When it's true, nothing can happen, or nothing can tell it what to do. If not is moving. And the question is it top or bottom? Should we store that in a variable or just actually look at the transform? I think storing in a variable makes sense. If we look at the transform, sometimes you have to deal with floating point precision issues. It's a little bit risky that someone might hook up something to make this move in a different way or change how it works. So, local, how do I want to define this? You basically want to say which stop is it at currently if it's not moving, or if it is moving. If it is moving, you can't use any buttons, so it doesn't really matter. Is at bottom. Sure, okay, start with it. So if you interact with the button at the bottom, we shouldn't even have the prompts be visible. These shouldn't be usable in these cases, but we have to check. So you shouldn't be able to call the elevator when it's already right in front of you. And you shouldn't be able to you should be able to call it when it's at the bottom. You shouldn't be able to call it if it's moving. Fine, whatever. And then down here, if it is at the bottom and it's not moving, then we send down. And in here, if it's not moving, then if it is at bottom, then send up. Else send down. You could argue that I might want to make this one function. I probably do. Because it's going to do almost the exact same thing. Yeah, let's make this one function. Send elevator to top, to bottom. If you wanted more stops, we'd make some sort of constants, like basically a manual enumerated type. But for now, we'll just pretend bottom is the magic number. So send up is us passing false. Send down is us passing true. And here we don't need this whole thing. Probably not in there. We want to send it to the bottom if it is not at the bottom. Yes, okay. So task dot, first thing we do here, before we even start waiting, we're activating it. So it is moving becomes true. Okay. We're going to set it to the bottom just so we don't worry about it. Equals to bottom. So it's not there yet. It will. We can do it at the end. We can make the variable really literally mean what it says. Then we want to disable all the triggers. So that line I had before, So now you can't use any of the buttons because it's moving. Seems fine. Then we want to wait. We'll probably forget something in here and add it later. Add the activation delay. Sure. Not worrying about sounds. And then elevator, move to. We need to figure out where to move to and how fast. Move duration equals top landing. World position. T minus bottom landing. Good. I should probably save some variables. So that's how far it needs to move. Divide by speed. Speed is distance over time. So you take distance, divide by speed, and you get time. You can move the math around in your head or write it down. You know. So that's how long this takes. And move to is, let's see, top landing and bottom landing they do not. Okay. So I need, it would be convenient if we could just move exactly to their position instead of having to move to, the Z coordinate and reconstruct the rest of it. So I'll move these out of there for a second. Take the top landing, set that to 0. These back in there. Great. And the bottom landing. Where did the rest of the bottom landing go? It's in the button. That's not right. Something went horribly awry. Oh no, that's correct. We're missing a piece here. Is it this one? No. Where is this guy? It somehow got into the top landing. Okay, let's fix that. Drag this out of here. Bottom landing. Give you just 0 out this position entirely. Great. And put everything back into it. Okay. In fact, we can just, these are never going to move, right? They're static. So we can just right up here. Bottom position. Top position. The risks of caps lock. All right. You could argue that I don't need to. I could also make this static. In fact, let's do that. Move duration, bunch of constants. Great. And depending on which, Lua doesn't really have a ternary operator if you're used to that in other languages. Instead, they have these clever. Let me talk about Lua a little bit here. So in C++, you could do something like and this is the ternary operator. If your Boolean is true, it gives you A. If it's false, it gives you B. It's pretty convenient. You can kind of match them in the middle of other things. In Lua, you don't have that, but instead they have or and or as very clever constructs. So if I say A and B, you might think that this gives you a Boolean, and really it gives you either A or B. And if you use it as a Boolean, it always gives you the right result. But if you try to use it in other ways, you can do a bunch of funny things with it. And some people who, pretty common in the Lua community, people really like using these constructs. They feel very clever about it, and they end up with, for instance, one thing that replaces the ternary operator. But you often find things that say things like this. This is probably nonsense, but this kind of construct. You put a bunch of ands and ors in a row, put some numbers in there, and it does something smart. The problem I have with this is that this is unreadable. To a new user, you have no idea what that means. And if you don't learn the exact patterns people like to use, you sit down with a piece of paper and start drawing out truth tables, and that's not very helpful. Especially when the alternate is to write if, else, then, and I have a couple lines, but otherwise it's very readable and does exactly what I want. Okay, so if we're going to bottom, we need bottom. Great. Going to top, we need top. Simple enough. Yeah. gonna do another task.wait here. I've done something horrible. Do another task.wait here. Gonna wait the amount of time it should take to get there. Then we know we're at the bottom, and we're gonna turn all the triggers back on again. In general, force on as the third option for collision invisibility is very rarely useful. It is very useful when it is, but you don't need it most of the time. Inherit is the behavior you want most of the time for something that's on. It's saying, if someone has another part of their game that hides this entire part of the level, the elevator shouldn't suddenly still be there or still functional because its parents aren't there. So we go on. Am I forgetting anything? So we've got triggers that do things. We've got the positions of the landing. We've got the elevator itself. We have the speed and the delay. I think this works. I hope. We didn't set is moving to false at the end. That was what I meant to do. Bottom gets set. I guess if I said this before or after, it's wrong either way, right? It's sort of like when it's moving, it's not at the bottom or the top, but I'm just using this one variable. I could name it better, maybe, whatever. Or moving towards the bottom, I think is easier to write, and then put this at the top. Doesn't affect the logic here. So hopefully, if I hit play, I should be able to use my elevator. All right, we did forget one thing. That's fine. Type modified non-networked object. Did I not make my elevator networked? I did. I didn't make my triggers networked. That's true. Trigger. Enable networking. Okay. What was my activation delay? 0. I feel like we should be moving. Maybe we're moving to the bottom. Let's give it a little bit. Oh, speed 0. Ha! Of course. All right, so this is, how tall is our top? 25 meters. Interesting it didn't print us an error. That should have been a divide by 0. That's fine. 25 meters, and we don't want this to take forever. We'll say it goes at 2 meters a second. We're probably gonna find this still to be horribly slow. Ha. We have some word line materials. We should do something about that. And now we're at the top. Oop. No. Sorry, this take a little bit. All right, so the things I want to do, I'll make it a little faster for, let's make it really fast for testing. I want to fix this zoom. All right, I jump down. See if this button works. Nope, sure doesn't. Maybe they move backwards, is what I think. So I hit the bottom button, and it sends elevator. Yeah, yep, these are backwards. Okay. If it's not at the bottom, I want to send it to the bottom. Sure. I want to fix the materials. I want to hook up the sounds, and I want to do one last thing, which is I want these buttons to only be active when they make sense. You can't call the elevator when it's already at your floor. Okay. So by default, this trigger right here, the bottom trigger, should be off. You can't push the button because you can't call it to where it already is. And then here, so the elevator button's always fine. Then in here, we're going to say if is at bottom, then. This might be backwards. If you're at the bottom, yeah, this is backwards, okay. Then the top trigger is good. If you're at the top, the bottom trigger is good. You can only call the one that's not where you are. Can't press that. Let's set it up there. Now I can call it. Back down. Up here. Can't press this one. Makes sense. Cool. Alright, so materials. Put those for a little bit. This guy. Maybe it's not smart. That actually looks fine. Thought we were gonna have to change the properties on it, maybe make a custom material. This is fine. Oop. And this guy, same deal. Yep. Because the sides were rotating a little bit. I think the bottom might do the same thing. Let's see what happens if I uncheck that. This looks fine. Incidentally, everything's fine. Sure. All right. So we've got the buttons all correct. We're using the properties. We don't have any sounds. So we're talking about how we're going to do this. We can duplicate a lot of the same logic. Just copy the script over. I don't like that. I've done that a lot of times. It's kind of dirty. I think I should do this in a better way. We can look at the position of the elevator and try to go from that, which is honestly pretty good, I think. I think we'll do a slightly hybrid approach here. We need to know a few things about the elevator itself. This guy, we're going to duplicate a little bit of logic. And then we're just going to watch and see when it starts moving. As soon as it starts moving, no matter how it's moving, we're going to say, hey, it's doing something. Let's activate this whole process and wait. So tick. Oh, we also need the elevator. That's pretty important. Thing that moves. So put it up here. All right. You know, I said yesterday, Monday, that I'd stop using get world position when I didn't need it. And here is a good example of that. In fact, I could have done the same thing here, I think. Because they all have the same parent. It's suddenly depending on the parent, which is, maybe this one's fine, because if someone wants to move these things around in the hierarchy a little bit and want it to fall apart, in this case, that's fine. If this whole thing is moving sideways, it doesn't make a sound. It's even more correct. Equal new position equals the same thing. If new position not equal the last position, then. All right, that's a whole function. A little bit of logic in here. We're going to use a very convenient design of this, which is that if you test.wait in a tick function, tick will not be called again until it finishes, until it returns. So you can't have multiple ticks open on the same script. So as soon as we start moving, we're like, hey, it happened. Something's going on. And we want to take this block of text and then probably delete 90% of it. All right, so we don't care if it's moving. We know that. We don't care about the triggers. Great. That's pretty simple. Don't care for at the bottom. We care about the task, not waits. That is the part we care about it. That was pretty easy. Okay. So the clunk happens first. Easy. As soon as you press the button, it clunks. I think. We might want to delete that one, we'll try. Then as soon as we start going, we play. And then as soon as we hit the top, we stop that one and play the end sound. Pretty straightforward. Okay. Well, now see all the errors this gives us. That was very fast. Like the elevator moves fast, but why is the sound so fast? Where did our client contacts go? This didn't sound like that, right? Curious. Movement sound is that one, right? I wonder if moving it very quickly makes it do something funny. Let's make it back to a real normal speed. Did I? Well, I think it's calling it a whole bunch of times. Let's just check that without looking at how we may have broken our script. Yes, okay, so it's calling that over and over again. How is it getting out of this? Did I just lie about how this works? Oh, we don't have move duration defined, so this is doing nothing. It waits the one short 0 time, goes through here, then immediately finishes up. Okay, that's the problem. We need this line right here, and we don't know top and bottom position because we don't know top and bottom landing. We need all these pieces. Okay, we can do that. I'm going to grab this whole section and put it right there. So we're going to add these 2 pieces. We're going to add this and this, 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 and this. Great. So we need top and bottom landing. Stop. Bottom landing, top landing. Okay. And now, nope, still no good. And sound, bottom landing, top landing. Why not? That is the question. Let's print move duration here. 12. Seems reasonable. Maybe it didn't update. Didn't update. I suspect my stop did not work. Oh, it called it again. Interesting. Of course, it doesn't necessarily line up perfectly. It did the whole duration again. Okay. That seems fine. We can... So we could bias this a little. We could add a little bit of time to try and avoid that. But then if someone goes down right away, it might not stop. What I think we should do is look at the sign of the change. So I'll make this a little bit smarter. We don't need that print anymore. We fixed it. We basically want to say, each time it moves, it has to move the opposite direction it moved before. So instead of equal last sign change. Is that the way I want to? No, I want to find this as Boolean. Are these downs or ups? Downs. Last moved down. Equals true, let's say. It's at the bottom. It's built this way, so it necessarily last moved down. If new position dot z, 2 cases here, less than last position dot z, so we moved downward, and not last move down, or the opposite. It's probably a slightly more elegant way to write this. Whatever. Moved up, and it fits in one line. Okay, so either way, then necessarily like the opposite of what it did before. Perfect. Let's make it go fast again. Silent. Huh. Doesn't matter where this is in here because it's going to hit this check before it, like I said, it has to exit this before it comes back to out of tick. So if new position.z is less, so it starts as true, we push the button, it comes into here, we've moved up, and it last moved down, so it goes to the whole thing and sets this to false. At the top we push the button, And it doesn't trigger the second time around. Let's try a few things. Print some text out here. So I'm just going to print out the new position, the last position, and whether it last moved down, as long as it's not triggering. So okay, so we have a new position that's up. It likes that. I caught it on the frame. That was pretty good. Oh, I guess, yeah, it didn't matter. It was on the frame. Oh, it doesn't check until way up at the top. Aha. I see the problem here. This needs to be outside the loop. Previously it was in the loop, and because the only case where it ever changed, it would update, but now it's doing this whole thing. So we always want this to be correct. If we move a little bit extra the same direction, we don't want to keep the last position completely wrong. An elevator. Sweet. I just hit my head. Actually, I'm curious about that. How does this handle? Wow! That's super cool! You inherit your velocity. Who made this? This is great. Not me, I mean the people who made the engine. Anyway, alright, we have an elevator. We're going to create a template from that and publish it. I'm pretty happy with that. Template. Publish to community content. Elevator system. An elevator with call buttons and 2 stops. And it kind of even looks like an elevator. Perfect. Cool. All right. Got an elevator. And on to the next great adventure. We're going to talk about design for a while. This is the real adventure. Look back here. I believe there's a template talent selector. I'm not going to use this. I'm going to start from scratch because this was a couple hours of work that was kind of, I didn't really like the approach I was taking, but it was, I guess the point I was making was that it's there. I've looked at this a little before. So we're just going to make a new project, talent selector, and we're going to talk about the point of this project. Let me find somewhere around this room. There's a piece of paper with the design of this thing on it. I hope. So it may not be. Nope. All right, that's all right. I can reconstruct this. So here's the idea. If you played an RPG, and many games come to mind, I'm thinking of Diablo or WoW, of games I've played, a lot of experience with. There's Path to Exile. There are many games that have these kind of systems. You have a tree selection system. Let me just load up some images on Google. Diablo talents or skills, I think they're called in Diablo. Yes, this guy right here. All right. So in Diablo, you start with exactly 1 point in one of these, and every time you level up, you can put another point. And they have dependencies, right? If you do not have a point in this skill, you cannot take a point in this skill. You can put multiple points in one skill in some games you can't. And each skill gives you a new spell, makes it more powerful. Some of them are passive things. They do something for your character. And there's multiple trees usually. In Diablo and WoW, there are 3. And depending on your class, you have different multiple trees. And you basically just say, let the characters pick things as they level up and get more powerful. And we're trying to make this system. Now, there's a lot of details. This is going to take definitely in the order of 3 or 4 streams, I think. And the things we're trying to do, we're trying to make it have multiple trees, be designable without looking into scripts. We don't need big tables in the scripts. I think I want to have an actual server context hierarchy that you can just construct, and the script reads through that and figures out where all the data should come from. I want each one of these to have, where it's positioned in the tree, what its icon is, its tooltip, what level requirements, what it depends on, what equipment it gives you, if I didn't mention that, and then be able to find a bunch of different trees, and then have some system for when which players have access to which trees, and when they're even shown this option. What resource, presumably we're just going to do hard code this to use level as a resource, but maybe it'll use something else. Some resource you use to put points into this sort of thing. And when does it show to the player, right? At some point, some action, maybe during the lobby of this game, this thing pops on your screen, maybe you press a button, and you look at all these things and you select the one you want, you change it, maybe there's a way to unselect it or reset all your talents, which is a common operation. And then that's the idea, and it would give you equipment. This is going to be very hard to generalize, and we're not going to try because this is pretty much, a pretty complex thing to begin with. So in the case of the game that I was trying to make with a friend, I needed this in the first place. These will be shown during the lobby, or even the basic game state. And they will give you equipment at the beginning of the round that will be removed at the end of the round, presumably. That's probably getting expensive. Now I think about that, maybe we should persist the equipment and just whenever you get a new talent, it hands it to you. Because if we remove and add it every time, by the time later in the game, if you have 8 players who each have 12 pieces of equipment and you just spawn this all at the same time, that's 100 networked objects spawned at the same time. And if those have any children at all, then you're going into multiple hundreds. That's crazy. Let's not do that. Let's spawn them when you select the talent. All right, so that's the idea. So we have to build the UI from the data that's in the tree. We have to collect all these values. All right, since I can't find a piece of paper, I'm actually going to go back to their project for a second to look at what I had done, because I did have some of this beginning thing. So in the talent selector here, trees. All right, so let's just look at this. Required level, X and Y, which is where in the tree it is. What equipment it gives you, a description, an icon, of course, that's important. The color, where the icons are references directly to core content icons. These guys, not to some templates that were made. So if you want to color it, you probably want the fiery things to generally be red and that sort of thing. The cost. Some of these, the way I thought about this, instead of having some of them you can put multiple points into for this kind of simple game, some of them just cost multiple points to take it all. So something really powerful might take 2 or 3 levels and you have to save up. And then, instead of trying to figure out how to depend on other pieces, I basically just opted to have it requires above, left, and above right, which in hindsight is probably below. Which is to say, if it's here, below left, below right, and it continues. Like, left and right are one column to the side, but it just goes down until it finds another talent. And if it doesn't, then it gets an error. So when it constructs this thing, you could make a bunch of invalid states, and it checks and will give you useful errors. If your tree X is 17 or -4, it says you can't do that. The tree's only got columns 1, 2, and 3, for example. Right. Okay. So that's the starting point here. I'm actually going to copy exactly this one folder over, and let's look at it. Just the other things, in case I really care about. Okay. We also need a way to keep track of what talents a player has stored, has kept active. And there's some networking inherent here, because the client side that's showing the UI also needs to construct the whole thing and needs to know exactly what state your player has to display it to you, to display which pieces you have and which pieces you could take. And there may be some mechanics later that enable you to know if another player has a certain talent. Okay. This is a big undertaking. I'm going to try to explain it as I go. That's exciting. I will try to break it into pieces because this is one of the biggest things I've made, and we'll see how it goes. So the first thing we're going to do is make the thing that reads all this data into a script. Pretty straightforward. We probably just want it in a big table of tables that says, here's all the talent trees that we can have. Doesn't care anything about players and what talents they have. It just says, here's all the data we read from the server context. All right, so we're going to write a function. Let's think about this a little bit. Do we want to require this thing? Probably, because both the server script and the client script are going to do the same thing, right? They both are going to read this entire tree. We don't need to transmit this entire tree over the network. That's madness. It's already in some static part that both sides can see. So we're going to talent selector utility. This is going to be required by other scripts, and so it will be shared between client and server. And it will local result equals table. That's probably what I should call it. Let's call it utility. If you haven't used require, it is a keyword in a script. You can say equals require something, my other script. I'll show you how to use it in a little bit, but it basically, the script that is in your project content but not in your hierarchy is the one that you require. So this one I won't put it in the tree at all. And the first time you call it, it actually runs through and runs the required script. And the required script will define a bunch of variables or functions, put them in a table, and return it. Then the other script that required actually gets that table as the result of the thing it required. But then you call it again, it doesn't actually run the function again. It doesn't read the script again and run again. It says, hey, I already know about this guy. Here's the table that they got before. Here's what you need. It's very useful for making shared code and not having to depend on your code staying in sync and having two different things that are, if you change one part and forget to change the other part, it gets broken. It's generally a pretty bad pattern. All right, so we're going to define a function in here. You can just define it right into the table. Read talent tree definition root. All right. And the end of the script is going to return utility. I should probably make that lowercase. It's a variable after all. And only mad people capitalize their variable names. It is a joke. Unreal capitalizes their variable names. And really, like, no one else. It's weird. All right. Read talent tree definition. So root is going to be a folder. It's going to be a server context. We should probably do a bunch of sanity checking here that we don't mess things up horribly. It shouldn't be a server context. I said that. I said it a couple times, but if the client has to read it, it can't be a server context. Back that up. It's going to be a big pile of static stuff. Big pile of groups. That seems fine. All right. Let us... Can we tell something's a group? Is that a type? Group. It is not. Oh, it's a folder. Any other objects? There are no properties functionality, but inherit everything from core object. I'm curious. Let's write another script here. We're going to call this talent test. We're going to use this script and we're going to replace it as we need it. We'll just use it to test things as we go. And it will have a reference to this guy. I'll show you how this works. I should make that first. All right, so this is utility. Here I'm going to capitalize it because it's basically constant. Maybe I should capitalize it here. I don't know. Yeah, let's do that. I'm all about consistency, even when it means I have to change things 7 times. All right, so we required the other script and set it to a variable, just like you do other things anyway, but now this will have this function. So the first thing we're going to do in this case is call this function on group. All right, so now as I'm running this function, if I hit play, it'll actually just call this function immediately and give us useful information. So print the type of the root. I don't know what it is. Folder. Okay. I don't know if I can tell it apart from a group. That's fine. Then error. Root must be a folder of a group. Perfect. All right. Did you get the wrong kind of thing? It doesn't even know what to do. If you give it nil, if you give it a stack mesh, that kind of stuff. All right. I'm now out of food. So we want to structure this in a way, a pretty simple way actually. Let's put another group in here, fire. All right, so one of the properties you notice is not here is the name of the thing. I'm just gonna take the name of the group itself and call it the name. We don't need to store extra data there. There's only one kind of name. And the talents are built into trees. We don't need to use the hierarchy structure to actually control how they depend on each other and where they're positioned. Those properties do this for us, and it's not quite a tree really, despite them being called talent trees. I mean, they kind of look like trees, but they're not quite the same pattern. But we do have individual trees. So when you have this root is the root of everything, and then each of the middle level is going to be each individual talent tree a player could have, and then the bottom is going to be the individual talent on those trees. That's it. 3 levels deep, no deeper. So tree in pairs, root, get children. All right. Also, we need to take the thing we're going to start building up. Local tree data. Do we actually want to return it to the script? Probably not, right? We might want the utility script to keep track of it itself and then just have other functions that get us pieces of it. Because this data is never going to change, right? When we read this tree, it's going to store a bunch of data and players can't affect it. They can't move talents around their trees. All they can do is put points into them. So we don't need the scripts themselves to have to know how this works on it and inside. So local talent tree table, maybe? Sure, we'll see if this gets unwieldy. All right, so for each tree group, be careful to try to be a little more specific with my names, because otherwise I'll have a bunch of things called tree or talent. So for each one of these, we're going to look through its children and jam all their data into the table. And we're going to, for itself, we're going to use it as the name is what we want. So talent tree table dot do that. So this will take the name of the group we got and use it as the key. So this will be a table, from key to value. The key is the name of the tree. That seems reasonable. And we don't want to add too much extra layers here. We don't want to have to index tables 3 times to get to anything useful. And then we're going to make a table, and that table is going to be 1 entry per talent. And those are going to they're going to be another table and have all the individual fields from the table. That's not too bad. We'll even add a comment here. Key is table is talent tree name. Value is a table with. Okay, so this is 3 levels deep. With talents table of tables with talent information. Okay. Not too bad. It's hard to get. I don't think we could reasonably get fewer levels than that. So we do that. Then for talent in pairs, tree group, get children. Same deal. So now we're going through each talent. Each talent has all these things. Bam. Except for, it's not script, it's talent. I bet I could have searched and replaced. Something where other engineers are watching and shaking their heads at me. And one second, I'm gonna open a window. And you can hear my train, maybe. By train, I mean the train. I've had this experience in the last few streams where I get to the stream, I'm like, man, it was warm in here. I should open the window. So we're going to read all these properties and jam them into a table, which will be in here. And I believe we'll use the name. The name will have to be unique. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this all in, and then we're going to do a bunch of checks, right? Make sure we didn't put any invalid data in. There's a lot of checks here we could do. We can make sure that tree X and tree Y are reasonable, that if it requires something, the thing's actually there, that we didn't have 2 talents with the same name or 2 trees with the same name, that the required level is positive, And we might even have a level cap defined somewhere. I don't have it currently, but maybe this game only goes up to level 15. And so if it requires level 20, that's nonsense. You know, does it have an actual icon? If it doesn't have an icon, that's probably bad. It's going to be really unusable. So that sort of thing. Is the cost positive? We'll do that. This will be a long script. Don't worry. All right. So the talent group tree name equals, instead of as you start to index more and more parts of a table, like more and more levels deep, you end up with a longer and longer string. So I'm just going to build a table right here, and then at the last line I'm going to jam it in. So local talent data dot required level. You could argue that these are all constant and should be capitalized. I think here I'm not going to do that. I think I'm gonna leave it as it's a lot of different properties on a lot of things, and costs, well, are kind of hard to read sometimes. Yeah, we'll leave it. Maybe I'll regret this later. All right, tree X, tree Y, equipment templates. I'm actually gonna add that to the end of this name. Make it clear what it's supposed to be. Description. Icon. All right. This isn't too bad so far. I'm gonna try to take this a little bit slow and meticulous because it's a big undertaking, and if I make some mistakes, I'll have to dig through and find them. Might be hard to track down. All right, we're making these below instead of above. I don't know how the games do. I know like Path Exile, it's just or Path of Exile, sorry, it's just every direction. But the ones I'm used to, like Diablo or WoW, they go down. I don't know if there's going up there's like a good argument for that. But I think I should do the thing that I'm expecting or thinking of instead of trying to change up the norm without really knowing if there's a good reason for it. If humans had I guess you have an expectation that you like read down, so your progression should head down, not up. All right, I can actually just stick that right there. So I've made a talent data table. It has a bunch of pieces in it. And then talent tree table, tree group dot name, talent dot name equals talent data. Okay, I believe this is correct. Hopefully it can index this way. So we take their table, we use the tree group name, so this will be in the fire. And then the talent name, this will be Fireball, and here's all its data. Seems pretty straightforward. If we didn't have to worry about error checking, or if we didn't care about worrying about error checking, I think we're basically done with this function. We've read in all the data, we haven't done anything useful with it, and if we want to worry about that later, if players want to take talents and get equipment and all that stuff, haven't done that at all. But for now, we've read all the data in. I made this big old table. I think I'm gonna do one quick thing. I'm gonna set this to nil so we can use it to check if we've even bothered to call this function and give useful errors. And then right here, I'm gonna set it to a table. So if it's nil, you know we haven't even read a tree. Versus somehow reading if you send it a group that's empty, they'll say, oh, well, there's no trees there. Okay, there's no trees to find, but I've succeeded. You might argue that that would be an error case. In fact, I think that is reasonable to say. So, let's see. Error cases. think about if there's a way to basically say, hey, are there no trees at all? That's an error. It's not easy to see if we've actually, because we're using the names as the keys, it's not easy to see how many elements are in the table without actually looping through it again, in which case we're not saving any trouble. We'll just check the same thing we checked in the first place. Error, no talent trees found. And in here, just copy this right there. So root, we're going to use tree group. Talent tree has no talents. We use string.format here. And these are all errors. Error exits the script immediately. So if you hit this, that's a terrible condition. You can't continue. In fact, I'm going to go so far as to say this one should be a warn, because you could have a bunch of useful things that you're testing, and then you add a new talent tree and don't add any talents to it and don't want it to break everything. So string.format's expecting a string. I want that guy. Okay. So you know talent tree fire has no talents. In this case, you can figure out why. Maybe it has no talents, or maybe you've done something wrong and made these the wrong types. I could do the same thing with this in multiple places. This can get relatively tedious or repetitive, but I think it's, for such a complex system, when you're building up and down, having very useful error messages is really going to pay off. Anytime, if I don't do this sort of thing, what'll happen is if you're maneuvering this tree around and trying to, as a designer, trying to add talents and remove talents and change things around, you accidentally say, put the whole fire tree inside the ice tree. If you don't get a useful error message, you're going to be lost, right? You're just going to be sitting here like, what happened? It might, the result might be that it almost works when some talents are missing, or that, that sort of thing, or maybe it gives you a random scripter and a random line where it tries to access a description and it's not there. And you're like, well, why isn't it there? Who knows? This will really help. So if tree group is not a folder, each talent tree, but we should not call this root. Talent tree root must be a folder group. Each talent tree must be a folder group. And then the same deal in here. Each talent must be a folder group. Again, I'm going to make these warns, maybe? We could argue that we could, well, this isn't talent. What was I thinking? So we could change this wording a little bit. We could also, nope, I'm losing it. I don't know what I was going to say. Forget about it. Each talent tree must be, yes, we want to say which talent tree is not. So talent tree root must be a folder group. Root, we're going to give it a name. But it's this guy. Okay. And we're going to copy that here and here. Change these back to warnings. No, these will be errors. If they're not folders or groups, you're doing something really strange. And it probably just means it has the wrong object entirely. Talent tree. Talent. Okay. Perfect. So if you see this error message and you've accidentally put your fireball template in here and you're like, oh, that's not supposed to be in there at all. It tells you exactly what you're looking for and you say, oh, that's the wrong thing. We're not going to catch exactly every error here. We're really going to try what all the ways you could go wrong. So we know we have a tree structure. We know there are things there. We check that there are talent trees, that they have talents, that there are folders and groups. They're all groups, but I can't tell easily. And we have all these things. So then we need a big old block down here. I'm going to put it after this line because it doesn't really matter if you're erring or warning. Actually, no. We're going to... Basically, I don't... If the talent is malformed, if it's missing properties or you accidentally dragged the wrong thing in here, a cube with no properties on it at all, I don't want to break the game. I want to say, hey, this we couldn't read this talent, it had errors, and not stick it in the table at all. Just pretend that talent's not there. And yeah, that might later result in, hey, something that depended on it, couldn't find it, but more often than not, it's going to be we put something in here we didn't mean to, or we copied something in a weird way and forgot to put some properties on it. So basically, if any of these are nil, there's a lot of error cases here. This is going to be a big script. All right. Local talent has error, maybe? No, I do this. That's fine. Okay. If talent data dot required level. Okay, so you forgot this property entirely. Print format required level missing on talent dot name. Okay, and we're going to use the magical continue, which I'm really hoping. Rip. All right. Lua doesn't have continue. I knew it was missing one of the control statements. I just couldn't remember which one. Continue is a statement in a lot of other languages that says, go back to the for loop, just go to the next loop, skip the rest of this loop. We don't have that. So, talent has errors. All right. Okay. This does the same thing, but it will tell you all the problems. So if you put a cube in here, you'll get a whole bunch of warnings. Maybe that's fine. Maybe you only need the first error because there's about 20 error cases here. Another question is, do we want the name stored in the table somewhere? Is there a case where you'd have a talent data and need to know its name? Probably not. If we need it, we'll add it later. All right, so I'm gonna go in the order of the operations. So first, do you not have required level? Second, it's a required level less than 0. Should this be level 1 or level 0? Most games start you at level 1. People tend to think counting from level 1. I would count from 0. That's me, but I don't know how we want to design this game. I'm going to assume that 0 is an okay thing. As a designer might even in a game that starts at level 1, they might just put 0 and say this doesn't require any level. That's what they want to say. Required level is negative. I don't know what the maximum level is. Can't give anything else here. Okay. Copy this one down. Tree X. So required level is. You might argue that I want to make that exactly the name of the property. I definitely do. Tree X is missing on talent X. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. If we want to, check if the X is in the range, we need to know how wide these talents should be, which is how many. If you looked at, back at the Diablo talent trees, these are 3 wide. There's exactly 3 slots. That's it. I think that should be an option. I think it should be right on the root. So we're going to say tree width. All the trees have to be the same size. Tree height. Store this right there. 3, 6 for our example game. Oops. So that's one of the first things we're going to do, and add a couple cases up here. These are on the root. Let's move these down a little bit because I'm going to put them in the table with the data. You might imagine a game where there are different defined talent trees and different players have access to different talent trees or something like that. This might end up being we might make assumptions later where that just doesn't work. And that seems pretty likely, but it's a thing to consider. Putting it in the table makes sense as a place to store that data. And this is where this goes, so this has, maybe not. Because the key is the talent tree name, so you're going to think there's a tree called tree width, which doesn't make any sense. If I stick it in there, yep, we'll make this global. Fine, whatever. It'll work. Local tree width. We don't have a value yet. I'll make these all caps. These really are constants. They're just reading the things directly from the custom properties. Great. Tree table we're constructing. All right, so then down here, if tree data x less than 1 or talent data dot tree x greater than tree width. So if tree width is 3, this must be 1, 2, or 3, or else we have an error. Tree x must be between 1 and blammo. Perfect. Take these lines, paste them again, change this to y. And this to height. Up here, we have more error cases as well. I forgot about real quick. You have tree width. It's less than 1. That's bad. Error tree width root must be positive. All right. We're going to run all this, and then we're going to hit play, and it's going to give us a bunch of errors. Let's see what it does now. Nothing. I believe it called it, right? If I print A, does it print A one time? It does print A one time. That's amazing. This is very lucky. This will never happen again. All right, so we've got these 3 down, equipment template. We can't do anything except for check if it's not there. There's no invalid, no way to check if it's an invalid thing. You know, we could spawn one and see if it's equipment, but that's very expensive for checking. So if we're missing that, equipment template, perfect. Description. I'm gonna combine this one a little bit. All right, so there's 2 cases here, right? Case so if they don't have the property at all and it's nil. Second case is that it is a empty string, and because the error message could reasonably missing the description, missing on talent, blah, could literally say it's empty or it's not there at all. That person's gonna look and find either one. So I'm gonna check both cases together. Okay, icon color, same deal. There's no invalid color, there's no invalid. We can't check if this is actually reference to UI material versus something else too easily without actually using it, and then we're causing other problems. So we'll take this guy, the one that didn't have the special case on it. Oops, 2 more. Icon color. Admittedly, it would be kind of strange to lose some of these properties, but not all, but you could imagine where you accidentally delete one property or something like that. All right, cost. We're getting into the slightly more interesting ones. Cost missing. All right, and then we're gonna do the same thing for if cost is less than 1. Can't have a cost less than 1. Well, let's say 0. I'm not going to rule it out. It might be a mistake, but someone might have an interesting system where you get a reward for, let's say something requires multiple things. I forgot about these were above. We're going to change that back in a minute. Something could require multiple things and then be a reward for taking all of them. That's free. That seems fine. Cost must be positive. All right. We're going to change this back to above. It's not is required for, it's required. So you can require the one above you or the one above to the left or the one above to the right. That makes sense. Whoops. Didn't think that through. In fact, you'll even notice that I named this wrong because I wasn't really thinking about it. Requires above. Okay. This guy above. So we're at cost. Okay, so requires are the interesting ones. We're going to check that they're not missing right here. Easy enough to do. Requires above. Okay. The thing that we are missing here is that we want to make sure there's actually something to require there, but we might not have it yet. We might not have read it in the talent yet. These don't necessarily have to be in a certain order, and we're reading through the children in random order. So maybe the talent we're trying to require isn't there yet. So what we have to do is go through this again. After we read it all, we have to read through again and make sure there are things where we want them to be. There's also a question of how easily can we draw arrows at funny angles? How bad is this going to look, right? So if I open up my favorite art editing tool and I say I've got a talent here, got a talent here, got a talent here, got a talent here, and I want this guy to require the one up to the right of it, so we put a big old, oops, let's make these colored, a big old arrow here, and this one requires the one up to the left of it, and we put a big old arrow here. That looks awful. We could try to do something smart, where our arrows go down like this and then over, and depending on how smart we go, this could be really complicated or confusing. We could we have to check there's openings in between. It could go either way to try to get around things, right? If there's talent here, we could do this, but if there's talent on this side, we could go the other way. That sounds ugly and sounds like it has a lot of problems. If you look at, back to this guy, these talents do this sometimes. Actually, they don't. Let's do what they do. Let's just copy Diablo. No, I'm kidding. This actually seems like a pretty elegant solution. Oh no, here we go. Here's an example. All right. I was going to say, this is the one that requires diagonally, but like also at an angle. Maybe we don't need that. Maybe our talent trees are small enough that this isn't constricting, and maybe we should just design it this way, and if this comes up to be a problem later, we'll worry about it. But to say, basically, they can only require, when they require an angle, it has to be exactly one row above it. If they require directly above, it can go multiple rows. That's fine. We just go up until we find something. That's easy enough to handle. But the angled ones, we just say, is there something right above? If not, we got trouble. Or, we're not going to do this now, but it's something we could add later. It's pretty easy to say, go over and then up, and whatever you find first is what it requires, right? Actually, that seems pretty straightforward. I like this. Because the one diagonal arrow can't get in the way, right? They can't have a talent there. And then it just finds whatever's next. We don't have to worry about doing a straight line. We don't have to worry about going up and then over, because, as I just drew a picture that couldn't make... This guy, these can depend in this way. This is fine. These arrows don't overlap. It looks okay. If instead this guy were over here, then this would just require this one. It can't require this guy because it doesn't have the option to do that. This one would still try to find something up here. So that seems fine. Okay, we'll do that. So now we're going to make sure these things all have talents that they know about. In fact, we probably even want to store it in the table of what is required, right? Because later when the client trying to draw this thing and saying, hey, can you select this talent, it needs to know if the required talents, if they have required talents, it needs to know what they are and if they have points in them. And if it's just looking at requires above, you know what, maybe that's fine. Maybe finding it again isn't too hard. Maybe we'll need some helper functions in here though, in this enormous function we have. Okay. Function. I'm not gonna, I won't put this as part of the table until I need to. Get required talents. So this would expect you to pass in, I guess I should call this talent data. I don't know what if we're ever going to use the word talent, I feel like it's so overloaded in this context that just trying to use it is going to confuse people. So get required talent data gets you the data of the other talent. You're giving it, you get one talent, it's going to give you data of another talent, but it needs to know which one. Each one can require 3 different talents. And the question is, in the practical use from the client of saying, can I draw this? Or the server saying, hey, can they actually take this talent? You don't care about one particular, you care about all of them. Do they have, you need all the required talents. And that way they can, you can check they have all of them, and then that's fine. If you are trying to do error checking like we are right now, you care about each one. You want to give in a useful error message in each case. We could give the error message right in here. That actually seems pretty simple because let's do that. So this is going to give you a table of all the talents. Let's that count. Print a table of all up to 3 required talent datas. Datum, data, whatever. So it'll give us the, because you need the name anyway, so a table helps as opposed to, well, you often need the name. So what we're going to do here is we got to here. And we're in this for loop. Okay. For talent data in this guy, I think this will work. Pairs. I really have a habit of putting my cursor right over the things I'm typing. So this guy we just jammed talent data into. And the, okay, that's not, we need to cut this guy off. All right. So this gives you a whole tree, whatever tree group we're in. And it's going to give us that this will be the name of the talent. This will be talent data. We don't actually care about the name of the talent right now, so we don't need it. We're just going to call this function. We're not going to care about the result at all. We're just going to call it on every one of these. And that way it'll error if any of them are invalid. We can do it per tree because that tree is already there. Everything that's required should be there. Check for requirement errors and disregard the results. Okay. Let us make sure we don't have any errors again. Interesting. Things are missing. No, they aren't. Ah, really? Talent data requires above. Talent customer requires above. Requires above, left, above. That's really what this says, right? Fireball. does. Did I spell this correctly? That looks the same. Ah, poop. Okay. Here's the problem. I didn't check that it was nil. I checked it was not. Not as false. Required level. Okay, so I can use that shortcut for some of these. Maybe that's not the great idea. Maybe I should actually just say equals equals nil on all these. That's unfortunate, but that is fine. We can do this. Missing. There we go. In Lua land, there are exactly two things that are false, and they are false and nil. People coming from other languages may be surprised that 0 is not false. I am also surprised by this. I didn't design it. It seems crazy. No, that one's correct. These 3. Okay. It's good to sanity check as you go rather than having a bunch of errors all at once, especially when it hides other errors. All right, so we gotta make sure if we check one of these, you'll see that it doesn't actually do anything because we're not actually checking that it has a thing above it. Great. So we're trying to find I see some missing data here. We're trying to go through the tree and find the thing that is where it needs to be. Okay. There's a lot of checks in here. The problem is, from the talent data itself, we can't actually figure out where it is. What we need to know is what tree are we in, so we can find that piece. We know what root we're in. There's only one. There's just one talent tree table. We know the name of our talent, or we can know the name of our talent, but we don't care because there's only one talent. Ah, we didn't check that. Let's write this down. Let's instead of stream ideas, we're actually gonna let's get these two out of here. We're actually gonna make a to-do list just for this because this is gonna be a big undertaking. Talent selector. We need. Let's get rid of the scripts too. So check requires offsides. Talent, basically, does it go off the edge of the thing? Is there actually something there? We forgot some cases. Overlapping talents, position, and name. Those are also error cases. Let me find a place to put this real quick. I'm not showing all my super secret stuff. It's not that secret. Talent selector. Okay. Right. So we have error cases where we have multiple talents. Overlapping trees. Okay, name. Talents have the same position, that's bad. They could have the same name, that's bad. They could have the same equipment, that would be okay. You could have multiple passives in different places in trees that give you the same equipment that gives you more health, for example. They could have the same description, icon, color, cost, yeah. They're basically just name. So we'll add those in a minute. But let's check out this required thing and show that it works. And we need the name of the talent, because we need to be able to, the name of the tree that it's in. It's a little bit redundant. Often when you're working in a system like this, you find that you have a little bit of redundant data, so you can go both ways in an efficient manner. The alternate, without having the name, is to literally dig through, iterate through every single talent and try to find the one that has the same position, for example, which is a mess. So we're going to say talent data dot tree name equals tree group dot name. Maybe this doesn't need to be called tree group. We'll just call it tree. That's probably fine. Yep. I guess. Now the tree group is literally the group, right? Or this could be talent group maybe. It's like the distinction here is between the object in your hierarchy that defines this and the abstract concept of the talent that your player can have. So I'm going to do this manually because otherwise I'll end up with broken behavior, because you see it's in the strings as well. I don't want to change those. And now I'm having that thing where this doesn't look like a real word. That is how that goes. Alright, so tree group is still tree group, but calling it tree name is fine. Because it's not, it's the abstract concept. Okay. So now we have a tree name field. So, we can, for this thing we need, local tree name equals talent data dot tree name, it's right there. Local talent tree, it's called tree. It's talent tree table. Sometimes, depending on the system I'm working on, sometimes I'm okay with variables that are singular and plural of the same word. It's a pretty common pattern in Python. You'll have a container full of players and you'll call it players. And then you'll say for player in players. In this case, I could call this talent trees, and this, is a single talent tree. And then the abstract concept of a single talent is, well, the talent data now, because I could call it tree data. I think about naming probably sometimes too much, sometimes not enough. It's very important to be very clear about what you're doing. I think some people kind of don't like fiddling over this sort of thing and end up with things that are hard to read. Tree data. Talent data, tree data. Sure. That makes sense. Talent tree. See, if I use data here, it'd be talent trees data, talent tree data. That doesn't make any sense. Tree table, tree name. All right. So first error case, tree data equals nil. I don't know that I reasonably have to check this case. I'm going to do it. This case means we somehow got a talent into this function that had a tree name that was not in the table. That means we have an error in this code ourselves. It's not something a designer could break by changing the thing. That's fine. It's still an error case. I don't want to get it mixed up with some other error case, and I expect, given the complexity of the system, to run into a variety of problems. I expect to have all sorts of bugs that go on that are basically just I've messed something up or duplicated something or forgotten something because there's so many options, so many pieces to it. Cannot find talent tree with name. Tree name. String dot format. Okay. And I need a set of parentheses. It's very convenient that it colors things for you. If you're missing something, it's telling you. If I delete the then, everything turns white. Right, so we have the tree data. And so we're going to look through all the talents in here. For talent, name, talent, data, and I can't name that talent data. We already have talent data. Lou would probably not err about this. I've had a soapbox about this before. Languages should not let you name two variables the same thing. Nonsense. It's always a mistake. For talent name, talent data. I want to name one of these like source talent data or something. Some people will have different styling when they have this problem. I'll put this a capital T on the argument or something. Some people will abbreviate one of them. I like trying to figure out how to conceptually differentiate them. They're not the same thing, right? Acquired talent data. Base talent data, maybe. Source talent data. Root talent data. is. We're going to be putting these into a table, but we want to iterate through everything to find the ones that actually match the behavior. In some sense, we want to be able to find the talents by X and Y coordinates. Well, we'll come back to this naming kerfuffle in a second. But we want to be able to say, is there a talent at this X and Y coordinate? Is there a talent at this X and Y coordinate? And currently we have no way to do that besides iterating through and finding it. That's not actually that slow. We could just make a table that, or a function that does this and iterates through and tries to find the thing. In fact, we might even just do that. We could put it into another data structure if it is slow, but we'll do that later. Function get talent data at position. Tree name X, Y. Okay, this will be very helpful. Let's think about this before we write that function. Arg talent data, RHS. There's a lot of functions that have a variable called RHS, stands for right hand side. It feels like I ran into a situation once where some CS student thought they were pretty clever or superior because they understood what that meant, and I felt that this was a kind of a dumb. Well, it's dumb, obviously, but it was also just like, it's dumb that anyone is struggling to understand something because no one bothered to explain an acronym. And this is a very common problem in a lot of places, unfortunately. You should never hesitate to ask about acronyms. I've even heard a story where a bunch of high-ups at a company were using acronyms in a meeting, and someone asked what it meant, and no one actually knew. That has been my tangent about acronyms. That was really bugging me. Root past source, like the source of this query to find talent data. You know what? This is brilliant. With this function, we don't have this problem anymore because we're not going to use the for loop. I've solved that problem. I'll run into the problem in a second later, but whatever. Maybe. All right. So this function is looking at a tree name. So we're going to do exactly this. Oop. What are we going to call this? Maybe we just want tree data here instead of tree name. We're only going to call it another function where we already have the data. We don't need to go find it ourselves. We can just take this data and pass it in. I have now convinced myself that we should put the talent name in the tree, because this will come up later, but this function will end up being used a lot of times, like when you have the, well, it's like when you mouse over things that might need to show you the name of the talent and that sort of thing. Maybe that will be stored in a different way. Maybe we'll just set, as we build the UI element, to actually set the strings ourselves. Let's not worry about that. For blank talent data in there's tree data. That's how we define this thing, right? Tree data is this guy. It has name to talent data. Yep, just as expected. Okay. If talent data dot tree x equals x, and talent data dot tree y equals y, and return talent data. Easy. If you don't find it all, you could return nil. You could type this. It actually does nothing. If Lua doesn't, if a Lua function returns without returning a value, then it effectively has returned nil. Hello, Jitspo. I mean, hey there. Howdy. We are building a talent selecting system for a RPG style game. So we're taking a couple streams to get through, but it is a large endeavor that I'm trying to take part by part and carefully. Okay, so this finds us the thing. We might want to check in here that you're giving it reasonable bounds, but at the same time, these are not... The error checking is mostly for... It's the opposite argument of here, but it's mostly for functions that someone else can call or things that can be affected by people actually putting things into groups, versus this function will be called by the functions inside. If you pass in x and y values that are out of range, it's garbage. That being said, I'm still going to check it. If x less than 1 or x greater than width, then string.format called invalid x. I don't have the mathematical symbols for, you know, contains or doesn't contain, that sort of thing. It's okay. Not x. I'm just going to give it just the x coordinate. I could give it the range as well, but that's pretty easy to check, and then I have to figure out how to word this here, and this error will be pretty easy to track down. Why? Okay. So this should find a talent if it's there. So here we go. We've got a talent. We know where it is. If local result equals great. It's enough. I'm thinking we need the names again. I'm going to keep putting it off until we actually need it. I think here the question is, does the result table... I was going to have the result table mimic the tree table. And so I was going to have the keys will be the names and the values would be the talent datas. But we can't do that if we don't have the names. And looking through this data, we don't have the names. Let's just put it in here. Data.name equals talent.name. Okay. And you'll notice down here we put in the table, it's there as well. Throw it twice. It's not going to hurt us too bad. Party of 15, oh man. Well, hello everyone, that's exciting. I am using Core here to build a talent selecting system for an RPG style game. And it has a lot of parts, and I'll be building it over the next few streams. The plan that we're currently doing is, imagine you're playing an RPG where you have talent trees, and each talent tree has a bunch of talents in it. I like Core quite a bit. I actually work at Core. I'm an engineer there. But I think it is fantastic. I love using it for my personal things. It can make a lot of... I've had lots of game ideas over the years that would have been insurmountable by myself, and now I can make a lot of them. For this talent tree, there's one group that is the root of it, says how big each talent tree is. One group that is each tree inside of it. So if you imagine your typical RPG, you have a fire tree and a fireball. We just picked very obvious examples to work on this. And each talent has a bunch of properties on it. And we are working on step 1 here, which is to write the code that reads this tree into Lua data and makes it accessible for other systems to display on your screen, to use and give you the actual skills and spells and abilities, equipment or whatever that it gives you, and to activate when you would select things and unselect things. You can't hear me because I'm too quiet, or you can't hear me at all. I feel like someone in my stream up to this point would have mentioned this at this point if I was really actually silent. I really hope someone would have mentioned it. Chill that model. You can hear me. All right. Sorry, Sir Fetish Fancy. That's an interesting name. All right, back to actually trying to write this. So I am writing a function that, given the data for a specific talent, makes sure or tells you what other talents it depends on. I have a screenshot here from Diablo. Each talent can depend on the things above it, to the left of it, or to the right of it. And in each case, it just goes up until it finds a talent. And the error case here, this is one of the things we're checking, is if there's nothing there. If we're on the left and it's trying to require the thing to the left, if we're on the right, it's trying to require the thing to the right, or if it just goes right off the top. All right. You might be a bit quieter than most, but I can hear you. Well, I can turn this up a little bit. If that is, please tell me if this is still too quiet and I can go to the next hardware solution. Or if it's way too loud, who knows? All right. So we are going to look for talents in the positions that we need. So if talent data dot requires above, then we're gonna look for things above it. So local x equals talent data dot tree x, local for y equals talent data dot tree y -1, right? So we are y starts from the top down. 1, 1 is the top left corner. X is the top to the right. It's kind of the UI, sort of like more the UI coordinate system or writing. This is Lua. It is the common scripting language in a lot of games, but it's the engine that Core uses, or the language that Core uses to script game logic. Y goes that to 1 and -1. Let me double check that that's how Lua for loops work. I believe it's starting, ending, and iterator. Let's just go over to Google. Lua for loop. For lop. So close. For lops. You usually use them iterating through a container, not through. Ah, yes, here we go. 10, 1, -1. Okay. So we're going to go through that and see if we find a talent. And if we do, we're going to break out of the for loop. If required talent data equals this guy, tree data xy, perfect. If required talent data, then results talent data dot name equals required talent data. Break. All right. So if you if we find something, so we start with the one right. This is for requires above. We start with the one right above it. If we find something, we that's great. That's the required talent. Put it in here, just as the tree data already is. The name is the key. The value is the data. And we break out of this for loop. If we don't find anything, we continue the next level, the next row, the next row. All right. And then we have an error case. If we didn't find anything, so we did require above, and we didn't find anything yet. Ooh, we don't even know what the name is. How interesting. That is okay. We'll just blade do this instead of trying to figure out if we found something. Your case, what kind of case? Talent found. I didn't find a talent. Ha, I see. If we find it, okay, so if not talent found, then we have an error. And I think that we can give this a warning case. This is I'm running in Lua in Sublime, but this is Core. You can find it at coregames.com. It came out last week to the public. It allows you to easily make games, make game logic, make art, make good-looking things that are not what I'm doing because I'm an engineer. I tend to spend a lot of time writing code and have solid debug squares. But there are, I'll come back to this in a second, I'll show you. There are good-looking games with actual art, and if you load them up, they actually look like that. These are mostly screenshots from the games. And it is an entire platform. You can make games, you can play games, you can publish your games very easily. You can press one button, publish your game, play with your friends immediately by giving them a link. The engine itself is a fairly small download, but then playing games themselves is basically no download at all. Very convenient. All right, so this is a warning case. If you have a requirement that's not there, I'm just going to pretend that I'm going to actually knock the requirement out of there. I'm just going to say, it's not, here's a warning. You tried to require something that wasn't there. You probably just checked the wrong box, and let's keep going so we can get useful testing in or whatever. Talent blah missing above or as requires above but no required talent found. So we need our talent data dot name. Oops, name. Perfect. That white line is just in the right spot. An easy mod platform without the base game getting in the way. That is true. I grew up playing Source games, lots of Half-Life and Counter-Strike and 100 other mods. And there were some really messy games. I saw some funny things, and people, back then, you had to, you're a passionate, teenager who wants to mod a game, you have to go look at C++ code and figure out what mess they had written. And I actually wrote my own mod that was very simple, but one of the things I remember most clearly from it is I took the rocket launcher from Half-Life and made it not home. You just fired a rocket, it went straight. And the homing code had this big comment at the top that said, "We have no idea how this works. Don't touch it." And I was like, that's a little scary from a professional engine with thousands of lines, thousands of files and all that. But that's how it was. All right, so we have the talent, no talent found. Perfect. All right, we're going to do this exact same thing 3 times. The other 2 cases are going to be slightly different. We can be sure, you could do some sort of checking, but we can be sure these aren't going to be the same because we're about to add some checks down here that you don't have 2 talents in the same place or with the same name. So if these find talents with the same names, that means you have 2 talents in different places with the same name. That was already an error case, we already handled it. Okay, so requires above left, requires above right. The only addition here is that x is -1 or +1, and we have to check that that's actually valid. And so let's see, if you don't find as many warn go on, that's fine. You'd argue that we should set the data. I wonder how this works. I bet this works. Lua is one of the languages. Well, thank you. Enjoy your food. Lua is one of those languages like C# and some other modern languages, Python, Java, that has value types and reference types. Which is to say, if I have 2 integers, 2 numbers, oops, local x equals 3, local y equals x, and then I say y equals 4, I did not change x, right? Y became a copy. There's 2 different variables. You change one, the other one's unchanged. These are value types. The other kind of types, if I made a string, let's see some different letters. I can. It is at coregames.com. It is free to download, free to play, free to make all the games you want. We have tutorials, documentation, Discord, where I can help you with things. You'd think that in my About Core thing, I should make that a hyperlink. That is definitely a thing I should improve. All right, so if I make a string type, let's make this a table. I make another table that references the first one. These are reference types. So I now have 2 pointers to the same thing. If I, let's see, add something to this table, and then print C, if I were to, this isn't going to run probably, but if I did that, C would also have this in it. They're 2 pointers to the same thing. Okay, so the point of this is that when I get talent data here, I can be pretty sure it's actually the structure in the main table and not some copy of it somewhere, because in order to get a copy of it, someone would have had to do some work. They would have had to take, somewhere would have had to copy all these properties over or use some table copying functions, which I'm pretty sure I'm not doing. So if I change this table, which is what I'm about to do, it'll actually fix the main table. So if you're missing something, we should make it so it doesn't require that anymore, so we don't get a warning every single time this happens. Okay. You get 1 warning 1 time. All right, the last thing we want to check is that x and y or x is reasonable. If we require above left, we better not be already on the left or we're in trouble. So if x equals 0, then we have an error. In fact, we're going to do the same thing as a warning. This guy would give errors. That's bad. We don't want to do that. So we're going to... So this case is an error, and then else everything else. We don't want to run this code if we have an error. Like, we want this to be a warning. We don't want this to be an error. We want to continue and let it go on just the same as we handled this case. But we also don't want to run the rest of this code and have it handle this poorly. These things are all going to fail if this is true. So we're going to take this code, copy it up here, back a line. Talent blah has requires above left, but tree x equals 1. I want to check that that's how I... Yes. All right, so that's fine. And we're going to copy this logic down here. And this function is almost done. So if x equals tree width plus 1, we ran off the edge. This requires above right. But tree x is, what did I actually call that in here? What is the user going to see? Tree width. All right. So you're already on the right side. You're trying to require something to the right. You can't do that. Perfect. Okay. So if we hit play, bam, errors. Compiling errors. Hey, look at that. This is what I usually expected. Then expected here equals 17. Where is 17? Okay. So it didn't like this equal sign because it wasn't a double equal sign. Single equals an assignment. In some languages, like C, that is an acceptable thing to do and usually a mistake. The equals operator sometimes returns things. Often does. So you can do A equals B equals C. Who needs that anyway? On the way, it's like, what are you doing? This isn't valid. So we do that. Stop. We play. Single error. 73. Attempt to call no value. Warning. Well, that's true. It's called warn. Warn. Warning. 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 So it happened to tell me the line of the thing it actually ran into, which is the thing I intentionally put in there to test that this worked. And again. Warning. Perfect. Talent fireball missing. Well, I left a word in there. Has requires above, but not required talent found. And it does have requires above. I checked that. Requires above left. Oh man, these error messages are out of date. Has requires above right and requires above left. I updated one of them, but not the other one. Okay. Update. Perfect. But not required talent found, but no required talent found. Required found. Was not found. That seems like English. Okay. So we've handled this. Got talent position, we've got required talent data, what a function, and read talent definition. We look back at our to-do list. We've handled that we actually have requires. They're not the sides. Great. Let us uncheck that box. Let us stop, uncheck that box. Play again, no errors. Perfect. Overlapping talents and overlapping trees. Easy enough to check for. Oh, still the same, still Sublime, got it. So when we get to a tree group, the first thing we do is this. We want the way you check for overlapping is see if that's already there. If it's already there, we've got a problem. We could try to warn and get out of there, but I'm not gonna. This is bad. I'm not gonna try to handle this case gracefully. If you have two trees of the same name, it's gonna at best ignore an entire tree, which is probably not what the designers want, so it's not useful testing. Talent tree blah has duplicate name. Simple enough. All right, and so we can test that works. Nothing happened. Control W that. Bam. Talent tree fire has duplicate name. Cool. Sure does. call this, you know, ice. Everyone's favorite RPG things. It works. Okay. You can have the same talent in multiple trees. That seems fine. You can't have the same talent name within one tree. That seems like a reasonable limitation. You can imagine a case where you'd want that, but really, at worst, you could call it 0.1, 0.2, or 0.3 or something like that. And we can worry about that later if that's really something we want to change. I think having two talents in the same place is definitely a problem. But having two talents in the same name, probably a problem. Okay, so here we are. Basically the same check we just did here. I'm going to put it inside this one. And let's think about rearranging this one up here a little bit too. Yeah, I'm gonna move the error checks up now that we have a bunch of them. We don't need to do anything until we've got through these error groups rather than... Oh, doesn't matter. Just looks a little cleaner. So talent blah has talent group has duplicate name, and this is instead of that in tree group. Name talent tree. So here, well, let's find the line where I should put in the thing. It's this right here. That is where the talent data is going to go. So that is the thing we need to check. Yep. Okay, makes sense. Duplicate name, error. We're almost there with our checking. If we have two fireballs, perfect. Doesn't like it. We're gonna call this Fireball 2. Fireballist, I don't know. That's fine with that. This is gonna be there so that we can check the positioning problem, which is to say, do we have two things in the same position? One way to do this is to wait till the end where we're doing this and say, hey, are these duplicates? But if we do that, we're gonna end with, depending on how we do it, we might end up with multiple errors, right? You're saying, hey, talent A overlaps with B, talent B overlaps with A. That's two errors. Well, it's not really two errors. If we do it as we add them, then we'll only ever get one error for a collision because it's basically checking against all the ones that are already there and not against the ones in the future. That checks every pair once. I don't know if there's an elegant and easy way to explain that, but maybe it's just obvious. If I, let's say you have a bunch of people you're trying to check. If you have the same birthday, each person walks in the room and says, hey, my birthday is January 24th, and everyone else in the room says, nope, not me. Okay, yeah, you enter the room. Next person comes in, my birthday is June 7th. Well, if any two people share a birthday, someone you'll hit collision in that test. So, right here, we can just call our helpful function up here. Although maybe that'll give us errors. We'll hit these errors in a weird timing. Maybe that's fine. Or we check at the end and do it once. Yeah, I don't actually like. I don't want these errors to show up. We can do this in the middle, right? So if you have an invalid X or Y, that is checked down here. We don't want to supersede those errors. We don't want our different errors that are less readable to show up. But down here, before we actually jam it in here, we can do this. So we haven't actually inserted in the table yet, but we're going to say, is there, I'm missing an argument here, I realize, but we're going to say, is there something already there? It'll check through all the table that's presumably in a valid state. We didn't add their talent yet, but everything else there is not half finished. If it finds something, then we've got an error. Perfect. We can even actually store this off, so we can say which both talents. If you have a collision, you want to know both halves of it. So cool. Conflicting talent data equals blah. And this is the tree data we need, which is this guy right there, I think. That is a long line. Maybe we just cut that up a little bit. Is tree data saved anywhere here? Nope, we haven't used that name in here. Will that even be enough? My solution to long lines, generally, just as a personal style choice, is not to break them up, but to make it more readable by giving these parts different names. So I could do something like this. I haven't defined X anywhere in here. I have not. Okay. I can just do that, and now it's readable. Perfect. If collecting talent data, then we have an error. I just realized that I used print in a bunch of these. Talent has errors. Why did I use print instead of error warn? So in these cases, if the talent has errors, we just don't add it, and that is just a warning. So these should all be warned instead of prints. Print shows up white, warn yellow, and red for error. Makes sense. This is just a habit. I write a lot of prints. All right, so this is similarly a warn. Format, talents, blah and blah have the same position. And so one of them is this guy right here. One of them is this guy. And we've run out of characters again. And we put this line down here. Okay, so we can poop. There's only a few characters over, so I just named this like other talent data. It's not quite as clear, but it will solve my problem. This is kind of an arbitrary line. I've chosen myself to be a reasonable point of what's the word I'm looking for? Shoot, I can't think of it. Compromise. Haha. Compromise between some archaic limits. A lot of people think that 80 characters is the right limit. 80 characters is about here. And modern monitors that can do hundreds and hundreds. I think this is kind of about where it's still pretty readable. It's easy to share. People with different monitors could use it. I have, I'm streaming on it with a much larger text size than I normally would to make it readable. Hopefully this is still manageable. So that should handle two talents in the same place. All right, talents Fireballer and Fireball at the same position. Great. And we don't need to say what will happen because it's a warning. One of them is going to be missing. Okay. So that is all the code we need to read through a talent tree and read all the data into a table for your future use and to handle a bajillion error cases. We have just written almost 300 lines of code. That is pretty great. Nope, oops. That's the guy we wanted. All right. Living trees or living talents. Let us talk about what we're going to do next time. For new people, I only stream 7 to 10 Pacific time. That is right now. And I stream Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and sometimes on the weekend. I will probably be doing more weekend streaming. This has been going very well. So we're going to do all the other parts of this. So we need replicated player talent state, which is to say every player needs to know, at least you need to know which talents you have, and the server needs to be authoritative on that. I can't let the clients just choose what they want, not only because it would, as a general approach to game design, you don't let the clients be in charge of things because someone could take the client and change it and find some way to get around your protections and connect to a game. That's not a huge worry for a platform where lots of small games exist, but if one large game blew up, then this would be a problem, and people are very resourceful. Not only that, but just mechanically, you need the server to spawn the equipment. The equipment are networked. It needs to be able to, the server needs to know about that. So we need to be able to look at each player's talents. You might even have a thing, this actually seems pretty likely, a screen where you hit tab to see the scores and it shows you other players' talents. so you know what you're playing against. Is this guy going to the frost tree or the shadow tree or the, depending on what game you're playing. And so that's a way to keep this data replicated. We can do it in a couple ways. I have some ideas. We'll think about it and talk and design it out. We need to deal with the UI. This is the biggest part of this. Client UI. So we need to construct these enormous, basically on the fly during game time, we need to construct this UI element that has buttons for every single talent, the right icons, the right colors. You can hover over them for tooltips, and it knows, so this has construction, showing, hiding, and interaction. Basically, it knows when to show and hide based on the game. It knows what it costs. I should make interaction its own thing. Interaction / costs. Do you have the levels for the things? What's available? Should we color the ones that you don't have available yet for, you're not high enough level, you don't have the requirements, you don't have the resources. Should we make those gray or should we make them different colors so that you can tell why you can't do that? If you mouse over it, maybe the tooltip's been adjusted to tell you what you're missing. That seems pretty important. The ones you do have available, it tells you what it would cost or something. You click the button, bam, you've got that talent. Untalenting, resetting, do we have a system for that? Don't know. Actually giving equipment. At the beginning of the stream, I talked about doing this every round. The first target game of this is a short round-based game. Each round will be in the order of 1 to 5 minutes. Then at the end of the round, you'll have a little bit of time to put your talents into, spend talents, get your character more powerful, then another round where you fight against other players. And do we give the equipment every round? At the beginning of every round, say, here's all your stuff? That would be pretty expensive for networking, unfortunately, because each equipment would be multiple pieces, and we're giving each talent as an equipment. So if each player has 12 talents, you've got 10 players in a game. Each equipment has 3 pieces. That's already 300 or 400 networked objects all at the same time. That's a totally manageable number if you spawn them spread out, but if you spawn them all at once, the server has to send a bunch of information to every client, completely caps all the connections, and it's kind of a problem. So we will probably just spawn them as we go. And each time you click a talent, you look at the equipment, even though you're not in the game at the moment, you're invisible or dead. Doesn't matter. That might run into problems. We'll solve them as we go. That's how we'll do that. There are probably more things to this that I'm not thinking of at the moment. Let's think for just a minute. Sending to server. When you select a talent, you need to tell the server you want that talent, and we need to make this really robust. The only mechanism in core right now for, I'm lying. One of the mechanisms in core right now for server-to-client communication is to send a custom event, but custom events have limits, and when they fail, if you've sent too many events at the same time, which hopefully we don't have this problem, but they just fail. We need to do a little bit of checking just to make sure it's robust, because if you click on the talent and your client says, yep, I got that, and it spends it, and the server doesn't, then you just never get the talent. That's no good. Presumably what we will do is make it so that the server, the client doesn't actually modify the UI until it gets the confirmation from the server that you clicked on it. So you can click on it, and if it fails, it just does nothing, and you click on it again, and it will work. Another way to solve this would be to look at if the broadcast failed, and if it did, just try sending it again. Maybe wait a second between sends until it works. That has some dangers. If something is just some other piece of something that someone dragged into a game is just saturating the connection entirely and it never succeeds, it might just keep sending events that are doing nothing, and that's a bad case anyway. We'll think about that. I can't think of anything else at the moment. There may be 1 or 2 more things as we go, but this is what we're going to do. I don't know exactly the order. We might do it in this order. I think constructing the UI this will probably be an hour. Each of these will be an hour or 2, or maybe an hour. The client UI is going to be a big piece. We're going to have to make a bunch of templates. We're going to have to line up all the arrows that point the talents to each other. We're going to have to put all the templates. We're going to have the tooltips work, have all the buttons hooked up. That's a big piece. And then these things may be quicker. And that's what I'll do next time. I will be streaming 7 p.m. on Friday. Thanks for coming and watching, everyone. And thanks for the raid.